You can see how many of our hurricanes begin off the west coast of Africa. So we have weather satellites watching that region with the evidence of tropical activity. On paper, hurricane season ends today, so pretty unlikely we're going to see any hurricanes for the rest of the year. But if something does happen, the weather satellites will let us know. Another use of satellites is land use management. We talked about the satellites in a polar orbit going on the poles. They can monitor the size of the ice cover of the poles. The planet uses that ice cover to reflect heat back into space, so as the ice cover gets smaller, the planet loses its ability to cool itself off. You can also use satellites to track the size of forests. Plants inhale carbon dioxide and give off oxygen. So as we lose some plants and forests due to industrialization, the planet loses some ability to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. A commercial use of satellites is tracking airplane traffic. This example shows you air traffic among 9,000 civilian airports on a typical day. Now rotated around so you can see the other side. What this does not show you is that satellites are also used to track ships at sea, which move much more slowly than airplanes do. So governments and private companies use satellites to track their ships as they make their way across the oceans. We said earlier that the moon is a natural satellite, and that NASA has been studying the moon since the agency began in October 1958. NASA's first program was called Pioneer. The goal of that program was to study the region between Earth and the moon. It's called cislunar space. The first Pioneer probes launched from Cape Canaveral to try to escape Earth orbit for the first time, to fly past the moon, take a picture of the moon, and transmit that picture back to Earth. These early attempts failed, but with Pioneer 4, March 3, 1959, for the first time the United States did successfully escape Earth orbit, but we did not get the first picture of the moon. The Soviet Union successfully escaped Earth orbit and flew past the moon in January 1959. In May 1961, President Kennedy proposed the Apollo moon program, to put a man on the moon by the end of the 1960s. But before we can send the Apollo astronauts to the moon, we needed to find a safe landing site for them. So they were preceded by 3 robotic programs, starting with Project Ranger. Ranger was very simple. It was a probe that launched from Cape Canaveral. It escaped Earth orbit and headed towards the moon. As it got closer, it transmitted back black and white images of what it saw. And the best picture you got was just before it went splat and crater, landing crater. The next program was Lunar Orbiter, and the key word there is orbit. For the first time, the United States put satellites in orbit around another world. 5 satellites orbiting the moon in 1966 and 67, mapping 99% of the lunar surface. And that was how they identified potential landing sites for the Apollo astronauts. The third robotic program was called Surveyor. Surveyors were robots that landed at those potential Apollo landing sites. When they landed, they had color cameras to transmit back pictures of what they saw, and they had scoops for sampling the soil, so we can make sure it's not made of green cheese. We'll start on this side and come to the other side in just a moment. The yellow numbers show you where the Apollo astronauts landed, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. The S's are where the surveyors landed. You can see that S3 and 12 are together. Now we'll bring around the picture to the other side. The yellow numbers show you where the Apollo astronauts landed, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, and 17. The S's are where the surveyors landed. You can see that S3 and 12 are together. Now we'll bring back the picture. You can see that with Apollo 12 in November 1969, the second mission to put astronauts on the moon, their specific mission was to go to the Surveyor 3 landing site. So as you can see in the picture, Apollo 12 landed about 600 feet or 180 meters away from Surveyor 3. Alan Bean and Pete Conrad walked over to the robot. Alan Bean took the picture as Pete Conrad moved the camera and scoop to bring it back to Earth. So one of the many ways we can prove we did put people on the moon is you can go to the National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. You can see the camera they brought back from Surveyor 3. Or you can go to the Kansas Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, Kansas, and you can see the scoop they brought back from Surveyor 3. Now, while we were sending people to the moon in the 1960s, we did not ignore the rest of the solar system. Starting in 1960, both we and the Soviet Union, today Russia, began exploring our planetary neighbors.